6 weeks after he called me, he died. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. It just was like the twists just kept coming.
Welcome back to Family Twist. I'm Corey, and today's episode is one that's close to our hearts. Kendall and I are joined by Eve Sturgis, host of the Everything's Relative podcast, a must-listen for anyone who's found themselves navigating the unexpected, beautiful, and sometimes complicated world of surprise family discoveries. Eve's journey took her across the country where she met 3 half-siblings she didn't know she had until a few years ago. And I know firsthand how life-changing and life-rearranging these revelations can be. When you grow up believing one version of your story and then find out there's a whole new chapter you didn't even know existed, it shakes everything. Identity, trust, belonging. But it can also create connections you never imagined. We'll dive into Eve's travels, the emotions of meeting new family, and the universal challenges of rewriting your own story. Let's get into it. Well, Eve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah.
We want to talk about this amazing road trip, your podcast. But I think first, can you just give us a little bit of backstory for folks who might not be familiar with your story? Let's talk about your twist.
Yeah, I think the important things to know if we're doing kind of Cliff's Notes is I was raised in a more or less heteronormative Christian white family in Northern California. My parents were high school sweethearts, and a lot of my childhood is defined by me. And then 6 years ago, a man contacted my husband on Facebook and said, I really need to talk to you about your wife. And then he also had details about my life that were like very insider information, like things that nobody would know about my childhood. And I'd never heard of this man and didn't recognize his face or anything. And so I said, I guess call him. So my husband called him and he said, thanks for calling me. He said some other pleasantries and then said, so I'm calling because I think I'm Eve's father. I had an affair with her mother, and he had a whole narrative about it. But the point was, he was my dad. My dad was his belief. So it seemed like the thing to do was do a DNA test. So we did a DNA test, and he was correct. He was correct about that. And, everything crumbled accordingly. My whole understanding of my childhood, my whole understanding of my parents, my understanding of who I am, all those things that I'm sure the audience is fairly familiar with. And it turns out that he had always believed this. And so his family kind of knew about me all the time. He talked about me openly. And so there are all these siblings that have known about, half siblings that have known about me. 6 weeks after he called me, he died. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. It just was like the twists just kept coming. And I have children. I have a job. I'm in California. He was in Florida. There was sort of a talk and idea of me meeting him, but it certainly wasn't within the first 6 weeks. And there was no suggestion that he was that close to death. He was in recovery for cancer. So yes, he was ill. And he said that was part of the reason that he reached out after a lot of prayer. He died of a blood clot, and he had been done with chemo and had been declared cancer-free. He wasn't well, I guess, is what, he wasn't 100%. But the blood clot was a surprise. No one thought that was going to happen. That sort of just threw a wrench into things as far as understanding who they were, because I didn't want to bother all these people in the middle of their grief, and it was the pandemic. So I kept in touch with them. And meanwhile, I started a podcast and became more part of the community. And then last summer, we decided that my husband and I and my 2 youngest kids would get in a van and we would drive around the country to meet my half siblings. And so we did.
Wow. Before we get into the details of the story, just curious, what was the conversation like with your mother and raising father when you found got this like bombshell dropped on you?
Oh, good question. It was so I did contact them until I knew for sure. Because if it was just a story about a crazy man, then that's something totally different. So, more or less they were devastated. Like they were devastated. They had their reasons and they had stories. They would never ever come to light. I like a lot of things in their stories don't match up. Peter is his name. Peter's story doesn't match up with their story. And they've said things, and then they would say things when it all first happened and they were in the throes of an emotional experience. And then 6 weeks later, they would sort of tell the story again and it would be different. And I never felt like I really needed to point all that out.
Yeah.
I've never said, well, Peter said this happened and you're saying this happened. Or 6 weeks ago, you said you never saw him again. But then that doesn't make sense if then he was at this thing. It was tense. It was awkward. So far, it has been very hard for me to talk about it without very emotional. And I don't even think I'm necessarily emotional in a way that I would say I am sad, I am angry, I am confused. I'm all those things. I'm sort of sad for them and confused. And so I just get over. So we haven't had a very smooth conversation. We may never.
Well, I'm just curious, were you worried at some point, like when you started having that conversation with them, were you worried that maybe your raising father didn't even think this was a possibility and you'd be dropping a huge bomb?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I contacted my mom first and I did it with a letter, and there's reasons for that. But mostly I have such an inclination to take care. So I thought, if I hear the story, all my focus is going to be on how she feels. And I'm going to promise anything in the world to her that makes her feel better. And I don't want to do that. So I wrote a letter and made sure that somebody was with her when she read it. And so I asked, in it, I included those kind of details that I needed to know. I need to know if Dad knows. I need to know. Yeah. And he did know. And it's a story that's not unlike a lot of others in that they always knew it was a possibility to be this other person's. And that's about as much as they will admit.
Yeah.
And there's more to, it's sort of their story.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Was starting the podcast sort of like an attempt at like working through this therapeutically?
I think that's yes, but I didn't know it as clearly as I do now.
That's exactly that's exactly like it is for me. Yeah.
I think it was a way of hiding behind it. Like I could hide behind the podcast a little bit and focus on others and focus on the center of the story instead of allowing myself to explore through it.
Yep.
Sure, but I would imagine, just as what happens with Kendall all the time, is that something similar will come up when somebody's telling a story or something will spark, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, this is front and center of my mind.
For me, it feels like there's this pocket, there's my life, my sort of regular life. And then there's these. So that's interesting that you have the same experience, Kendall, with, finding out that you're sort of processing in these little bits.
Well, and for me, what I notice about myself is that I've been doing HR for 30 years. I hear people's stories all the time that are sad and, through them sometimes at some level. I joke and say I'm not a counselor, but that's sort of kind of my role to, when people are upset and need to come talk, whether it's a work issue or even a home life issue. And I can always detach from it because it never feels really similar to my life with Corey. Yeah. But then when I'm speaking to someone on our podcast, the connection is just so real. You know what I mean? Like I can empathize at such a different level. And it's funny because I was talking to a woman yesterday who's dealing with domestic, violence at home, and, gave her some resources for getting some help. And it's funny because, yes, it makes me angry, like at that story, but I find myself being even more angry when if you and I were talking about something and I got pissed off at your parent for some reason, like that feels so much more visceral for me. Like I can totally separate my professional life from this, and this feels so personal.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It just feels so personal. And I often, and maybe you have this experience too, but someone will say something that I had not thought of, or that touches something I hadn't done yet and touched yet. And it could really catch me off guard.
Yep.
And I like those moments.
Yeah.
I don't like them. Maybe I don't like them in the moment, maybe, but I'm grateful for those moments.
Yeah, we have those moments too. I mean, 150 episodes in, you'd think we've heard it all, but no.
No.
Mm-mm. Yep.
And yeah,
Yep.
just, I think, for me, this is about advocacy, right? So like, if for me, my reaction, giving a realistic reaction to that feeling is important. It's important for the guests to feel like they have support from us. And that's super
that's
important.
true.
And I'm just curious about your approach, Eve. And what we found early on was like, if we were to have pre-conversation, with somebody, to tell their story or whatever, that times was like, well, I wish I would recording the pre-interview because it turns out better than the real one, because I think we do too much. And me, journalists, like I'm just naturally inquisitive, but like it's almost like a little bit of a cheat to know the whole story, because like we like to have those clutch the pearls reactions when we hear something really surprising.
Oh, same. I feel the same way. Sometimes people send me, when they query or whatever, they send me their whole story in the email, and I will skim it to make sure they're contacting the right podcast. I would rather be with them as well. I'm jealous that you are a journalist. I constantly say that I'm not a journalist, and so I feel that's I wish so often questions, and I never think of them in the moment.
He's great.
And and or I think of them, but feel like that would be too pushy or rude or too invasive. And so I feel like I've missed a million opportunities. And in my mind, I think, oh, if I was a journalist, I would know how to do this better.
Well,
I'm assuming you are, Corey.
He does. Go ahead.
I don't like to brag on myself, but like interviewing people is like the favorite thing I do as far as like work and stuff goes. I mean, I've been interviewing people. So, I started on the junior high newspaper, so I consider myself a journalist ever since in one capacity or another. And it's great to be able to do what I've been doing pretty much my entire life. It's just, it's because it was a bummer to get out of the newspaper and industry completely, but that's what I did in the crash and everything.
Yeah, when all of journalism and newspapers and magazines.
Yes, I've had to find a different outlet, and I do marketing, now, so I do get to write about some interesting stuff.
Right. You could, the comparable skills that it needs. Yeah.
But you're right, Eve. Talking about an aha moment. Like I forget sometimes that I filter myself when we're on the podcast because of my weekday life. Like I'm used to knowing what questions not to ask. And I find that sometimes I have to remember to ask more personal questions on the podcast because I'm used to filtering myself in my work day during the weekdays, that I don't need to know as much personal information about people sometimes in my work life.
Right. Oh, I'm sure or I imagine that as HR, there's very specific questions you can and cannot ask in your job. Or a very specific way you have to talk about it, things with people. I can totally understand.
And we didn't do it with you just because we knew you're part of the community. We feel like we know you, but if it's somebody who we find or they find us and it's like a fresh thing, at the very beginning, I'll always say, hey, we edit, this isn't live. Right. We don't do gotcha journalism here. And so if you say anything that, you want edited out, or if you're just not comfortable with the questions, just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so funny now, however many episodes, we've both done over 100. It's just the learning process. Just, oh, we should do this. We should do that. Oh, we shouldn't do that. Oh, we should learn how to ask this. I wish I could do like, you wish you could. I don't, like conceptually, I do wish I could go back to the beginning and start over and interview everybody again. I have new questions or new ways of doing it or new perspectives.
Yeah, we're going through again and saying, oh, should we revisit with another, like a past guest, just because either their story is evolved since we spoke to them, or we just didn't ask a couple of questions that we're really curious about. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Oh, maybe we should all do some kind of like, where are they now? Follow up to the people. And also because the details of people's stories change, but their experience and feelings evolve. So there's definitely a whole other, I don't know, world to talk about what recovery looks like, or what the other side looks like, or not, or if you're stuck in it. Let's talk about that later. Maybe we should collaborate.
I even
we should
have
collaborate
a
or something.
Family member that I wish, Corey knows who I'm talking about, that I wish she or he could tell more of their feelings, and just it's not part of what we're going to be able to do right now, but maybe someday we'll see. But
never say never.
So what sparked the idea of this road trip with your family to go and meet your half siblings?
It was just a hypothetical idea that I thought I don't know really where it came from, except that I just said to my husband once, oh, what would be so fun, or what would be funny, or what I wish we could do. And it just stayed that idea for a few years, the whole time, until it wasn't. It just stayed like a hypothetical idea. Wouldn't it be funny? And I should mention, we filmed the whole thing. The intention was to make a documentary of the road trip. And then last two summers ago, or in 2023, we were talking about it, and it just became a now or never thought instead of a hypothetical funny idea, like start joining the circus. And so we sat down, and I really figured out what it would be to do that.
Where were your stops?
We went north through California, up through Idaho, into the tip of Montana, down into Wyoming, Colorado. And then we went east and headed towards Oklahoma, and ended up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And then that's when we headed west again, more south towards Texas, and swung through Dallas, and then up back.
And how many siblings did you meet on this journey?
We met 3, and that family has their own things going on. And so there were reasons that I didn't meet more. So the original plan was to meet more, and then things happened. And so I met 2 in one town, and then another one in Oklahoma. And then I visited podcast people. I visited people I'd met through the community, either had been on the podcast or had wanted to be on the podcast in between. So it was like I would do a guest, and then I would meet a sibling, and then I would meet a guest, and then I would meet a sibling. We did it that way. So it's funny because at one point I said, I met 3, and my husband said, I don't know if that's a really good rate, like 3 to 7, however many siblings I have. He was like, I don't know if that's really enough to make a movie. And I just I'm doing what I can.
Is the plan to meet more too?
Yeah. I would love to. I think, without speaking for them, they all have like different feelings about it, and their own lives, and their own experiences with Peter that kind of color their want. Or I think I met the ones that really wanted to.
Good.
Let's just
that's important because Corey and I tell the story about how we got to meet 2 of my 6 half siblings really quickly in person, and it took a while for some of the others. It is when I've never met number 6, but I don't know if I care.
Mhm.
That sounds awful.
No, I was just about to ask you if it felt like, does it feel like rejection if you're not meeting some of them? And for me, it doesn't really. But I think I came into it with very confused, ambiguous expectations. Had I wanted a connection and these people were avoiding me, that
Yeah,
would
and
feel
that
different.
for me is my half brother has made it clear that I don't think he has any desire to, which is fine. I think this many years in, it's getting closer to 8. I'm, I, can't give any
Mhm.
more energy to that. And I have to
Right.
just focus on the 6 that are
Right.
nice, the 5 that are nice. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Go to where the love is.
exactly.
Yeah.
So after that road trip, did it change your idea of what kind of a relationship you want to have with the siblings you did meet?
It did. Well, did it? There's one half sibling in particular that I connected with more like deeply and with more kinship than the other two. And it really blew my mind. Like, it's changed everything for me. And so I keep in touch with him. He's very enthusiastic about it. And yet I have different we are all so different. I don't know that they're all different from each other, but I am so different from them. And I knew that going in, but there's a lot of perspectives and values and world experience and education and opinion. I don't know. I don't every just think you name it, and we have the opposite experience, or we are the opposite. And also the age spread between them was pretty big, and they had different experiences with Peter, who raised them all, is their father, or was raised them all, but just different experiences based on what was going on in their lives. And I would like to keep in touch, but I don't see very close emotional connections
And
being
I don't
made.
want, it does. And
That makes
you don't
sense.
have to answer this, but for me, those differences in values and opinions and things, I've been surprised at how much that has limited my ability to be close. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's because you just didn't know what you didn't know. If I think about the fact that
Right.
I feel really similar to my adoptive parents, and I feel even similar to step my my adoptive father. He married a second time after my mother passed, and I was very ingrained in that family. And I just feel sociologically, I feel really closer to all of those opinions and perspectives and things. And to your point, you can't like unlearn what you know what I'm saying, or devalue what you value,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I really went on the trip to get to know them a little bit, and more so though was to ask them about who Peter was. That was my kind of primary goal. And so I asked them a lot of, what does it mean to share the same DNA? What does it mean? What was it like to be raised by Peter? What does it mean if I'm also Peter's? So there wasn't a lot of sit around the campfire bonding time or deep talks about our life. And I think we both would have been hesitant to, I don't know if we would have been, I'm up for anything, but I I
I hear
don't like
ya.
conflict.
I hear ya.
I'll
And
just
it's
say
funny.
that.
Because I was raised as an only child, and even when I got my stepsisters as teenagers, I've just always been really free to be demonstrative. So I didn't realize what it was going to be like
Mhm.
to all find siblings that are also that way.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so like Corey knows my local brother and I just love each other so much, and we get along, but we know to stay away from some topics,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
we just, let's not go there. If you gave us both cocktails and we started, it would not be
Right.
pretty. And we know that about each
Yeah.
other because he's as vocal as I
Mhm.
am and which I respect,
Mhm.
but it's just, we could clash if
Right.
we were not careful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was good for me to the whole podcast experience, the whole DNA discovery experience. And then because I did the podcast, I feel like I have learned and met and experienced more of the real fabric of America, like for less lack of a cheesy expression. I now have so much more experience with all these different views and values and opinions and socioeconomic statuses and education levels, like so much more real face-to-face life experience with all of that, as opposed to it just being an idea out there from my California bubble.
Oh, totally. I was raised to respect education so much that there wasn't a possibility you weren't going to graduate from high school, and there wasn't a possibility you weren't at least going to get one bachelor's degree. And yet only 2 of my 6 half siblings, the 2 who graduated high school, also graduated college.
So something we've been doing recently is asking the final question.
Yeah.
Is when you're deep in it, going through the twists in your mind, is there a musical artist or a song that you go to?
Oh,
We're such music fans.
yeah.
That I relate everything in my life to, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
from my past. Oh, this song means so much to me because I was living this experience.
That's such a good question. I did a little bit of that in the beginning of my podcast. And then at one point there's like a Spotify playlist, but yeah, I'll have to send it to you. Gosh, hard question to put on the spot.
There are artists that you particularly gravitate toward.
The most honest, maybe, answer is that I am always a sucker for sad songs, acoustic songs, folk songs, classic songs, singer-songwriters. That's always and I appreciate all sorts of other things, and that's certainly not predominant vibe in this house.
So are we talking like Joni Mitchell, James Taylor,
and then, more contemporary, sometimes even Taylor Swift when she sings the right kind of ballad. Yeah, so it can go pop. It could go the pop scene, but she has some ballads. If it's sad, I probably like it. Like
I'm the opposite. Corey laughs at me, but if a ballad comes on, I'm like, next.
Oh yeah. Some of this for the age, like give me a good REO Speedwagon power ballad.
Right,
And those
right.
Put an ice pick on my ears.
Yeah. I'm always like just organizing. One song is like "Night Swimming" by REM. I don't know if there is a single lyric in there that actually resonates with me and my experience, but there's something about the tone of that song that I really love.
I love that song. In fact, that album, Automatic for the People, was like, that was the album that I turned on, the CD I turned on when I was like writing term papers in college.
Yeah.
That was like my background music. Because there's some upbeat songs in it, but it's not, you can just listen to it as background music. We've talked about some interesting stuff, so let's like stay in touch. And I love the idea of collaborating.
Oh, yeah. I'm in this like sort of personal transitional period of trying to figure out what to change and how. And so I would love to talk about anything. Love to talk about anything new and different. Feeling ready for, and it's a lot of work. It's just a lot of work. I don't even mean to I'm not even whining. It's just like, it's a lot.
No, it is. Yeah,
no, I just,
and it's rewarding. But
yeah. And it's for me, I feel like, constantly weighing the reward and the work. It never stays the same. It never stays static.
It's true.
Yeah. The best part for us though is just having these conversations. Like this is the best part of it, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so jealous of people with big podcasts that just get to they go up with a studio and everything is set up. They just talk and then they leave and then that's all they have to do. I just I love that so much. So
yeah, I'm waiting for the person to hand me my lock.
Talking with Eve reminded us just how much strength it takes to embrace the truth when it finally comes knocking. Even if it's late, even if it's messy. Whether it's a cross-country road trip to meet siblings or a DNA test revealing long-held secrets, these family twist moments ask us to hold grief and joy in the same breath. Eve's story, like Kendall's, is proof that while the path might be unexpected, it could also lead to deeper understanding, new beginnings, and a family that looks a little different but feels just right. Thanks again for listening, and remember, family secrets are the ultimate plot twist. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir-Faire Marketing Communications and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.